I'm Audrey, 27, and I've always been the responsible one in my family. Since landing my tech job 5 years ago, I've supported my parents and brother financially, believing in family loyalty above all else. Then last Tuesday, my Uncle Fred accidentally sent me a video that shattered everything. I never thought my own father would call me a cash cow while laughing with my relatives over drinks. The shock left me gasping for air as I watched them joke about how easily they could manipulate me for money. If you've ever had family take advantage of your generosity, leave a comment below and hit subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to hear how I turned this heartbreak into the best decision of my life. Growing up in Rochester, Michigan, I learned early that responsibility wasn't equally distributed in our household. While my younger brother Ryan got away with everything from broken curfews to failed classes, I was expected to be perfect. My report cards were plastered on the refrigerator, each A representing my ticket to a better future. My parents, Diana and Jack, made it clear that education was the path to stability, something they desperately wanted after years of financial uncertainty. Dad's construction business had been successful initially. I remember our comfortable 4-bedroom house and annual summer vacations to Florida. But when I was 12, everything changed. The 2008 recession hit, and contracts dried up almost overnight. Within 18 months, Dad's company filed for bankruptcy. The arguments started then, hushed voices behind bedroom doors about mortgage payments and credit card debt. I threw myself into schoolwork, determined to earn scholarships that would ease my parents' burden. While my friends enjoyed typical teenage activities, I stayed up late studying and filling out college applications. The strategy paid off when I received a full academic scholarship to MIT. The day my acceptance letter arrived, Mom cried and Dad called everyone we knew. "Our Audrey is going to be somebody important," he'd say, pride evident in his voice. "She's going to change the world." 10 years later, I graduated with honors and multiple job offers. I chose a software development position in Boston, not the highest salary but excellent growth potential. Within 3 years, I'd been promoted twice and had built a comfortable emergency fund. That's when the calls from home started, including subtle hints about financial struggles. It began innocently enough. Mom mentioned their furnace needed replacing during our weekly Sunday call. "We're looking at options, but everything's so expensive these days," she sighed. Without hesitation, I offered to help. "Send me the quote, Mom. I can cover it." The gratitude seemed genuine, tearful thanks and promises to pay me back when things turned around. But the furnace was just the beginning. Dad's truck needed repairs. Ryan wanted to start a small business but couldn't qualify for a loan with his credit history. Mom required dental work not covered by insurance. Each request came wrapped in apologies and family loyalty. "We wouldn't ask if we had anyone else to turn to," became their standard preface. And I believed them. Every time. My best friend Madison noticed the pattern before I did. During our monthly brunch at our favorite cafe, she questioned my generosity. "Don't you think it's weird that these emergencies keep happening?" she asked, stirring her latte. "And they always seem to know exactly how much your latest bonus was." I defended my family immediately. "They're having a rough time. Dad's business never really recovered, and Mom's part-time job barely covers groceries." Madison raised an eyebrow but dropped the subject. She wouldn't understand. Her parents were both successful attorneys who had funded her condo down payment as a graduation gift. As my career advanced further, so did my financial commitments to my family. When my parents faced possible foreclosure, I paid off their remaining mortgage balance, $175,000 transferred from my savings and investment accounts. The relief on their faces during my next visit home convinced me I'd made the right decision. "You saved our home," Mom whispered, hugging me tightly. "How can we ever repay you?" "You don't need to," I assured her. "You gave me everything growing up. Now it's my turn to help." Ryan's business ideas came next, first a food truck, then a dropshipping website, followed by a landscaping service. Each venture required startup capital, and each eventually failed due to what my brother called market conditions or unexpected complications. I funded them all, believing in his potential despite the mounting evidence that he lacked business acumen. Uncle Fred was always on the periphery of these financial discussions. As Dad's younger brother, he maintained the carefree persona of the fun relative, the one who brought expensive whiskey to family gatherings while simultaneously borrowing money from everyone. He'd occasionally call me directly with his own requests, usually framed as temporary loans that were never repaid. When Mom needed surgery for her gallbladder, I covered the out-of-pocket expenses without question. When Ryan's car was repossessed, I paid the outstanding balance and bought him a reliable used Honda. When Dad mentioned their property taxes had increased significantly, I set up automatic monthly transfers to their account. By my 5th year in Boston, I had given my family well over $320,000. My savings had dwindled, and I delayed buying my own home to accommodate their needs. Yet whenever I visited Michigan, nothing seemed to improve. Their house remained in constant need of repairs. Ryan continued living at home, cycling through jobs and business ideas. Mom and Dad still complained about bills despite no longer having a mortgage. Still, I took pride in being their safety net. During holiday gatherings, relatives would comment on how lucky my parents were to have such a successful and generous daughter. I basked in that recognition, feeling I was fulfilling my familial duty. Madison remained skeptical. "When does it end, Audrey?" she asked during a weekend visit to my apartment. "You're putting your entire future on hold for them." "They're family," I replied firmly. "That's what family does. We take care of each other." I believed those words with my whole heart, even as a small voice inside questioned whether they would do the same for me if our situations were reversed. The first crack in my unwavering family loyalty appeared during a random Tuesday in October. I received a call from a number I didn't recognize while in a meeting at work. 3 voicemails followed in quick succession. When I finally checked them during my lunch break, I heard the concerned voice of Mrs. Patterson, my parents' elderly neighbor. "Audrey, dear, I think you should know there was quite a scene at your parents' house last night. I heard shouting about gambling debts and loan sharks. Your brother was screaming something awful. I'm worried about your folks." I called my mother immediately, but she dismissed my concerns. "Just a little disagreement about Ryan's business plans," she said. "Nothing serious." Unconvinced, I booked a flight to Michigan for the weekend. When I arrived unannounced Friday evening, the tension in the house was palpable. Ryan avoided eye contact, my father seemed unusually subdued, and Mom hovered anxiously, offering snacks and changing subjects whenever I asked direct questions. Saturday morning, I cornered Ryan in the kitchen while our parents were out grocery shopping. "What's going on?" I demanded. "Mrs. Patterson called me about shouting and gambling debts." "Is that what happened to the $20,000 I sent for your startup?" Ryan's face crumpled. He denied everything at first, claiming Mrs. Patterson was confused or making trouble. But when I remained firm, showing him the bank transfers and demanding receipts for business expenses, his facade broke. "I messed up, Audrey," he admitted, tears streaming down his face. "I got in with some guys who said they had a system for blackjack. It worked at first, I was up almost $15,000. I thought I could double your investment before starting the business. Then I hit a bad streak." The betrayal stung deeply. Just 3 weeks earlier, Ryan had called me with an elaborate pitch about an unmissable opportunity in specialty coffee imports. He described potential clients, profit margins, and growth projections. I'd been impressed by his apparent research and enthusiasm. The desperation in his voice as he explained he needed funding immediately or would lose the opportunity had pushed me to transfer the money that same day. "How much do you owe?" I asked, my voice hollow. $35,000, he whispered. "To people you don't want to owe money to." When our parents returned, I confronted all of them. Dad initially tried to minimize the situation, suggesting Ryan had just made a small error in judgment. Mom cried, begging me not to be angry. "He's just going through a rough patch," she insisted. "Everyone makes mistakes." "This isn't a mistake," I countered. "This is fraud." He lied to get money from me with no intention of starting a business. The argument lasted hours. Ryan eventually admitted that his gambling had been ongoing for years, explaining the rapid failures of his previous businesses. My parents confessed they'd known about his addiction but thought he could handle it himself. "We didn't want to worry you," Dad said. "You've done so much for us already." Exhausted and hurt, I finally offered an ultimatum. I would help one final time, paying off Ryan's dangerous debt, but only if he enrolled in a gambling addiction program and if my parents participated in family therapy to address their enabling behavior. "This is the last time," I stated firmly. "I mean it. No more lies, no more covering up problems until they're emergencies." They agreed readily, with tearful promises of change and transparency. Ryan enrolled in a 12-week recovery program the following Monday. My parents attended the first 2 family therapy sessions. For a brief period, it seemed like my family might actually transform. 2 months later, I flew home for Thanksgiving. The atmosphere was warmer than my previous visit. Ryan spoke enthusiastically about his recovery journey and a legitimate job interview he had scheduled. Mom and Dad seemed more relaxed, no financial requests peppered throughout conversation. After dinner, Dad raised a toast, to Audrey, the best daughter anyone could ask for. "We don't deserve you, honey." Everyone clinked glasses. The moment felt healing, like maybe we were establishing a healthier relationship. Back in Boston, I met Madison for coffee and recounted the apparent progress. "I'm skeptical," she said, stirring her cappuccino. "People don't change that easily. Especially when the dynamic has been established for years." "You don't understand family loyalty," I replied defensively. "Sometimes people just need a wake-up call." Madison gave me a look I couldn't quite interpret. "I hope you're right," was all she said. I left our coffee date irritated by her pessimism. Families could heal. People could change. And despite the betrayal, I still believed in mine. 6 months after Ryan's gambling confession, family dynamics seemed to have stabilized. Ryan had completed his program and found steady work at a local marketing firm. My parents hadn't asked for money in months, which I took as a positive sign of their improved financial management. Our weekly calls focused on everyday life rather than crises. Then my mother called on a Wednesday afternoon, her voice quivering. "The doctor found something," she said, breaking into sobs. "I need surgery. Soon." My heart plummeted. "What is it? Is it cancer?" "They're not sure yet," she replied. "That's why they need to operate. The specialist wants to do it next month, but our insurance won't cover most of it. The out-of-pocket is $45,000. Without hesitation, I promised to handle the expenses. "Send me the details from the hospital. I'll call them directly about payment." "No." Mom interjected quickly. "I mean, they're very busy. Just send it to us, and we'll take care of the paperwork." Something in her tone triggered a faint warning bell, but I dismissed it. This was my mother's health, not the time for suspicion. I arranged for a week off work and flew to Michigan, insisting on accompanying Mom to her pre-op appointment. She seemed unusually resistant to my involvement, suggesting I enjoy my vacation instead of sitting in doctors' offices. "I want to be there," I insisted. "I need to understand what we're dealing with." The morning of the appointment, Mom claimed she'd received a call rescheduling it for the following week, after I'd be gone. When I offered to extend my stay, she became flustered. "It's just preliminary paperwork anyway," she said. "Nothing important." That afternoon, while my parents were running errands, I found my mother's purse in their bedroom. I'd never invaded her privacy before, but the mounting inconsistencies compelled me to check. Inside her wallet, I found an insurance card and a folded paper. A statement from her healthcare provider showing her recent mammogram and follow-up visits were all covered in full. There was no mention of any surgical procedure or outstanding balance. When my parents returned, I confronted my mother with the statement. "There's no surgery scheduled, is there?" I asked quietly. Her face went through a series of emotions: shock, embarrassment, defensiveness, and finally resignation. I didn't lie about everything, she insisted. I did have tests, and they were all clear. Then why ask for $45,000? She hesitated before confessing. Marge and Beth from church are organizing a luxury cruise through the Mediterranean. I've always wanted to see those countries, but we could never afford it. The trip costs $20,000 per person, and I wanted your father to experience it too. After everything I've sacrificed for this family, don't I deserve some happiness? The manipulation stunned me. Using a cancer scare to fund a vacation was beyond anything I could have imagined from my own mother. You let me believe you might be dying, I said, my voice barely audible. Do you have any idea how terrified I've been? Dad arrived home midway through our confrontation. When he realized what had happened, he didn't seem nearly as shocked as he should have been. Instead, he attempted to minimize the situation. Your mother just needed a break, he explained, as if that justified everything. We've had a tough few years. This trip would do us both good. By lying about a life-threatening illness? I was incredulous. How could you think that was okay? Mom began crying, which had always been her most effective tool for ending uncomfortable conversations. I'm sorry. I just knew you wouldn't understand why it was so important to me. The family dinner that followed was excruciating. My parents acted as though their deception was a minor indiscretion rather than a profound betrayal. They reminisced about their honeymoon, their only overseas trip, and how they'd always dreamed of seeing Europe before they were too old. I sat silently, picking at my food and wondering if I even knew these people at all. Back in Boston, I called Madison and relayed the entire situation. She listened without interrupting, then said simply, I think you need to consider family therapy again. This isn't normal, Audrey. I agreed and reached out to my parents with the suggestion. Their response was immediate resistance. We don't need some stranger telling us how to be a family, Dad insisted. We made a mistake, but it won't happen again. Mom added emotional leverage. If you can't find it in your heart to forgive us without forcing us into therapy, maybe you're the one with the problem. Despite my better judgment, I eventually relented, though I implemented stricter boundaries. I would no longer send money without verification of need, and large amounts would be paid directly to service providers rather than to my family. I still sent occasional smaller amounts for groceries or to help with utilities, unable to completely sever the financial support that had become integral to our relationship. The distance between us grew. Our weekly calls became bi-weekly, then monthly. I felt a mixture of guilt and relief with each declined call or delayed response to their messages. 3 months after the medical bill deception, my contact with my family had dwindled to occasional text messages and brief calls. I told myself I was busy with work, a convenient excuse that allowed me to avoid examining the damaged relationship too closely. On a Tuesday evening in July, as I was preparing dinner in my apartment, my phone chimed with a message from Uncle Fred, family emergency meeting recording, everyone needs to watch. My stomach tightened. Another crisis. Another reason they might need money. I hesitated before opening the attachment, then pressed play, bracing myself for news of actual medical issues or financial catastrophe. Instead, the video showed my family gathered in my parents' living room. Wine glasses and beer bottles cluttered the coffee table. My father, mother, brother, and Uncle Fred were lounging on sofas, apparently unaware they were being recorded. Dad's face was flushed from alcohol, Mom was giggling, and Ryan was sprawled in an armchair. So when is Audrey coming to visit next? Uncle Fred's voice came from behind the camera. Dad shrugged. Who knows? She's been distant since Diana's little white lie about the surgery. Little white lie? Mom protested, laughing. I had her convinced I was at death's door. They all roared with laughter, and my blood ran cold. You know, Dad continued, raising his glass, we really lucked out with Audrey. Perfect little cash cow. My breath caught painfully in my chest. Remember when she paid off the house? Ryan chimed in. You said she'd never find out you were just behind on payments, not actually in foreclosure. Well, we were behind, Mom defended, still smiling. Just not as behind as we let her believe. The best was the second mortgage you never told her about, Uncle Fred added. Paid that off with the property tax money, right? Dad nodded, looking smug. She never questions anything. Just mention family loyalty, and she opens her checkbook. My business ventures were pretty creative, Ryan boasted. I almost believed some of them myself. The food truck one was my favorite, Uncle Fred said. You didn't even have a driver's license then. More laughter. My ears were ringing. Mom leaned forward conspiratorially. We should start planning for Christmas early this year. I'm thinking we need a new roof. Do we? Uncle Fred asked. Of course not, Dad replied. But Audrey doesn't need to know that. Uncle Fred moved the camera, seemingly to set it down, and his face appeared briefly before the screen went black. A moment later, the video ended. I stood frozen in my kitchen, phone clutched in my shaking hand. Nausea swept through me in waves. The casual cruelty of their conversation, the mockery, the admissions of years of deliberate deception, was unbearable. I barely made it to the bathroom before becoming violently ill. Afterward, I sat on the cold tile floor, trembling and trying to process what I'd witnessed. My entire relationship with my family suddenly appeared in a different light, not acts of love and support but a calculated pattern of exploitation. I called Madison, barely able to form coherent sentences as I explained what I'd seen. I'm coming over, she said immediately. Don't do anything until I get there. While waiting, I replayed portions of the video, methodically documenting each revelation, each admission of fraud. The second mortgage they'd never mentioned. The false foreclosure threat. Ryan's fictional businesses. The roof they didn't actually need. When Madison arrived, I was sitting on my couch with a legal pad filled with calculations. I added it up, I said numbly. Over 5 years, I've given them $322,000. My entire savings. The down payment for the house I'll never buy now. Madison sat beside me and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. I'm so sorry, Audrey. They've been laughing at me, I whispered. All this time. Their cash cow. My phone had been buzzing constantly with calls and texts from Uncle Fred. I finally checked the messages. OMG, wrong video, so sorry. Please delete without watching. Please call me Audrey. That was private joke, everyone was drunk. A voicemail played Uncle Fred's panicked voice. Audrey, that video was absolutely not meant for you. We were just blowing off steam. You know how much everyone loves you. Please call me back. I turned off my phone. That night, I barely slept. Each time I closed my eyes, I heard my father's voice, perfect little cash cow. I recalled every tearful thank you, every promise to pay me back, every assurance that they'd never ask again unless it was truly important. All lies. By morning, I had made my decision. 2 days after receiving the video, I requested emergency personal leave from work, packed a small suitcase, and drove the nearly 9 hours from Boston to Rochester. I didn't announce my visit. I didn't respond to the mounting messages from my family members, all suddenly desperate to reach me. The familiar streets of my hometown offered no comfort as I navigated toward my parents' house. Every landmark reminded me of a childhood I now questioned. Had anything been genuine? Or had I always been valued primarily for what I could provide? I parked in front of their house at 6:30 p.m., dinner time in the Williams household for as long as I could remember. Taking a deep breath, I approached the front door, the same door whose mortgage I had paid off, and rang the bell instead of using my key. Mom answered, surprise quickly shifting to nervous pleasure. Audrey. What are you doing here? Why didn't you tell us you were coming? Behind her, I heard Dad call out, who is it, Diana? It's Audrey, she replied, ushering me inside with a too bright smile. What a wonderful surprise. The living room, the same one from the video, was exactly as I remembered. Dad rose from his recliner, and Ryan emerged from the kitchen with a beer in hand. Their initial delight at seeing me quickly tempered as they registered my expression. "Is everything okay, honey?" Dad asked cautiously. Without responding, I connected my phone to their television using the HDMI cable still attached to their streaming device. Before anyone could question me further, I pressed play on Uncle Fred's video. The room fell silent as their own voices filled the space. I watched their faces transition from confusion to recognition to horror. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad's jaw tightened. Ryan stared at the floor. When the recording ended, I paused the screen on the final frame, Dad mid-laugh, Mom covering her smile coyly, Ryan gesturing animatedly. $322,000, I said quietly. That's how much your cash cow has provided over the past 5 years. Money I earned through education you praised but never would have funded. Money I sent while delaying my own life milestones. Money given out of love and loyalty to people who were laughing behind my back. The doorbell rang, interrupting my speech. Mom moved to answer it, perhaps grateful for the distraction. Uncle Fred burst into the living room, breathless and pale. "Audrey. Thank God. I've been trying to reach you." That video, it wasn't what it looked like. It looked exactly like what it was, I replied evenly. A moment of honesty I was never supposed to see. Dad found his voice first. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "We were just blowing off steam, having a few drinks." "In vino veritas," I quoted bitterly. "Tell me which part wasn't true. The second mortgage you never mentioned? The fake foreclosure threat? Ryan's businesses that never existed?" Mom started crying. "We made mistakes, but we love you. You can't throw away your family over one stupid conversation." "This wasn't one conversation," I countered. "This was the truth behind hundreds of conversations. Years of manipulation and lies." Ryan attempted a different approach. "I was drunk, Audrey. We all say stupid stuff when we're drunk. You were drunk when you admitted to creating fake business plans to get my money," I clarified. "You weren't drunk when you created those plans and presented them to me." The excuses continued, each more desperate than the last. Uncle Fred claimed he'd been recording as a joke. Mom insisted they'd been planning to pay me back eventually. Ryan suggested I was being overly sensitive. Finally, Dad's facade cracked. "What do you expect from us? You've been so successful while we've struggled for years. We just thought you owed us something after all we've done for you." The statement hung in the air, revealing the fundamental imbalance in our relationship. In their view, my success obligated me to fund their lifestyle indefinitely. "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked, my voice steady despite the emotion churning inside me. "You provided the legally required basics until I was 18. Since then, I've paid for everything myself through scholarships I earned and jobs I worked hard to excel at. I sent money because I thought you needed help, not because I owed you." My mother tried again, employing the emotional manipulation that had worked so effectively in the past. "After all the sacrifices we made raising you, this is how you repay us? By throwing a temper tantrum over a stupid joke? This ends now," I stated firmly. "No more money. No more financial support of any kind. If you're actually facing a genuine emergency in the future, you'll need to provide complete documentation, which I'll verify independently before considering any assistance." The reaction was immediate and ugly. My mother called me selfish and ungrateful. My father suggested I'd obviously been influenced by those liberal city friends who didn't understand family values. Ryan alternated between half-hearted apologies and accusations that I was overreacting. Uncle Fred attempted to position himself as a neutral party, despite his active participation in the deception. "Let's all just calm down and discuss this rationally," he suggested. "We're family." "Family doesn't exploit each other," I replied, gathering my purse and phone. "Family doesn't lie and manipulate for financial gain. What you've been doing has a name: financial abuse." And it stops today. I walked out despite their protests, ignoring the escalating shouts and recriminations. In my car, I sat for several minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, expecting to feel devastated. Instead, I felt oddly unburdened. As though I'd set down a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying for years. I checked into a nearby hotel, ignored the barrage of messages from family members, and called Madison. I did it, I told her. I confronted them. "How are you feeling?" she asked gently. "Lighter," I answered, surprising myself with the truth of it. Like I can finally stop trying to save people who were only pretending to drown. Returning to Boston after the confrontation marked the beginning of what my therapist would later call my reclamation journey. The first step was finding professional help to process the years of manipulation. Dr. Samantha Hayes specialized in family dynamics and financial abuse, terms I hadn't associated with my situation until she helped me recognize the patterns. "What you're experiencing is grief," she explained during our second session. "Not just for the money lost, but for the family relationship you believed you had." Those initial weeks were the hardest. My phone constantly lit up with messages from family members, each adopting different tactics to regain access to my financial support. Mom sent tearful voicemails about how she couldn't sleep knowing I was angry. Dad alternated between demanding respect and offering half-hearted apologies. Ryan claimed to be attending Gamblers Anonymous again and really changing this time. Uncle Fred took a different approach, sending a lengthy email acknowledging the family's problematic behavior while subtly suggesting he had always been the voice of reason, conveniently ignoring his active participation in the deception. Dr. Hayes helped me establish firm boundaries. I blocked their numbers on my phone but set up an email address specifically for family communication, which I checked only during therapy sessions to maintain emotional safety. "You're not obligated to subject yourself to ongoing manipulation while you heal," she reminded me regularly. On Dr. Hayes' recommendation, I joined an adult children of manipulative parents support group that met weekly in a community center near my apartment. The first meeting was overwhelming. Hearing strangers describe family dynamics eerily similar to mine made the reality of my situation impossible to deny. There I met Natalie, whose father had systematically drained her inheritance from her grandmother through elaborate guilt trips and false emergencies. Her story paralleled mine so closely that we often met for coffee before sessions to compare notes and coping strategies. "The hardest part," Natalie shared one afternoon, "is accepting that they won't change. They don't think they've done anything wrong, they think we're the problem for cutting them off." That painful truth became evident in my family's escalating tactics. When direct appeals failed, they enlisted extended family members to contact me. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly called with concerns about my mental health and family abandonment. My mother's sister sent a scathing email accusing me of being heartless for leaving my family destitute. 6 weeks after the confrontation, my mother claimed she had been hospitalized with chest pains caused by stress over our estrangement. The old Audrey would have immediately called the hospital, sent flowers, possibly even flown home. The new Audrey, with guidance from Dr. Hayes, called the hospital directly to confirm the claim before responding. There was no record of my mother being admitted. This pattern of manufactured emergencies continued for months. Dr. Hayes helped me recognize them as extinction bursts, the intensification of behavior that occurs when a previously rewarded action no longer produces results. "They're testing your boundaries," she explained. "Each time you maintain them, you're reinforcing that the old tactics won't work anymore." As painful as the family situation was, other aspects of my life began to improve. Without the constant financial drain, I could focus on rebuilding my savings and advancing my career. I accepted a project leadership role I'd previously declined due to family obligations. The additional responsibilities were challenging but fulfilling, providing a welcome distraction from personal turmoil. Madison remained my steadfast support, joining me for dinner every Wednesday and never saying "I told you so," despite having warned me for years. "I'm proud of you," she said instead. "This is the hardest thing you've ever done, and you're doing it with incredible grace." Grace didn't always feel like the right word. Some days, anger dominated my emotional landscape, rage at years of manipulation and at myself for not recognizing it sooner. Other days brought crushing sadness for the family I thought I had. Dr. Hayes assured me both reactions were normal parts of the healing process. The 6-month mark of no contact passed with a surprising sense of accomplishment. I'd maintained my boundaries despite increasingly desperate attempts to breach them. My emergency fund was slowly recovering. I'd even started volunteering at a financial literacy program for young adults, finding purpose in helping others avoid the pitfalls I'd experienced. During one particularly impactful therapy session, Dr. Hayes helped me recognize a fundamental truth that changed my perspective entirely. "You're not responsible for your family's happiness or financial stability," she said as I processed yet another guilt-inducing email from my father. "That was never your job, even though they convinced you it was." The statement hit me with unexpected force, unlocking a lifetime of assumed responsibility I'd never questioned. From childhood achiever to adult provider, I'd always defined my worth through what I could do for others, particularly my family. "Then who am I?" I asked quietly, "if not the responsible one who takes care of everything?" Dr. Hayes smiled. "That's the most important question you've asked since we started. And finding the answer is the work ahead of us." That question launched a period of intensive self-discovery. Who was Audrey Williams beyond her family's expectations and demands? What did she want for herself, independent of others' needs? The answers emerged slowly as I allowed myself to explore interests and desires I'd previously set aside. I joined a hiking group, discovering a love for outdoor adventures I'd never made time for. I took a ceramics class, finding meditative calm in shaping clay on a potter's wheel. I reconnected with college friends I'd lost touch with amid family obligations. When my family realized their manipulation tactics weren't working, they escalated to involving mutual acquaintances from my hometown. My former high school teacher called to express concern. My parents' next-door neighbor sent a Facebook message detailing how my parents' yard was unkempt because they couldn't afford lawn care anymore. Through it all, I maintained the boundaries Dr. Hayes and I had established. Each successful navigation of these challenges strengthened my resolve and clarified my path forward, a future defined by authentic relationships rather than obligation and exploitation. "The greatest gift you can give yourself," Natalie told me after sharing that she'd been no contact with her father for 3 years, "is permission to build a life based on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice." By the 1-year anniversary of receiving Uncle Fred's accidental video, I had made remarkable progress. The nightmares had subsided. The automatic guilt response to family messages had diminished. Most importantly, I'd begun to envision a future that wasn't defined by my family's needs but by my own goals and values. As the 1-year anniversary of my confrontation with my family approached, I found myself reflecting on the profound changes in my life. My apartment, once merely a place to sleep between work and family emergencies, had become a true home, decorated with ceramics I'd made, photographs from hiking trips, and comfortable furniture chosen purely for my enjoyment rather than its practicality or price. "I barely recognize my life sometimes," I told Madison over dinner at our favorite restaurant. "In a good way." "I recognize it," she replied with a smile. "This is the life you were meant to have before family obligations hijacked it." My career had flourished without constant interruptions from family crises. The project I'd led had been successfully implemented, earning me recognition throughout the company and a substantial promotion to development director. The financial security that position provided helped ease the lingering anxiety about the savings I'd lost to my family's manipulation. At one of my financial literacy volunteer sessions, I met Daniel, a financial advisor who taught budgeting classes at the same community center. Our first conversation revealed shared experiences. He'd grown up with a father who routinely borrowed money with no intention of repayment. "It took me years to understand that no is a complete sentence when it comes to financial boundaries," he told me during our first coffee date. That shared understanding made it easier to open up about my family's situation without fear of judgment. Unlike previous relationships where I'd hidden my family's financial demands out of embarrassment, with Daniel, I could be completely honest. Our relationship developed cautiously, both of us carrying baggage from past experiences with financial exploitation. We deliberately discussed money matters early, establishing clear expectations and boundaries. The transparency was refreshing and helped build a foundation of trust. This is how healthy relationships work, Dr. Hayes confirmed during a therapy session. Equal partnership, mutual respect, and open communication. My first holiday season without family loomed as a potential emotional minefield. Thanksgiving had always been spent in Michigan, Christmas Eve at my parents' house, Christmas Day with extended family. The traditions I'd taken for granted were suddenly unavailable, leaving an empty space I wasn't sure how to fill. Madison immediately included me in her family's Thanksgiving plans. Daniel invited me to a Friendsgiving celebration with his social circle the Saturday after. The community center organized a volunteer Christmas dinner delivery service that gave me purpose on Christmas Eve. "You're creating new traditions," Natalie pointed out during our pre-support group coffee. "Healthier ones based on genuine connection rather than obligation." She was right. These new celebrations lacked the undercurrent of tension that had characterized family gatherings. No one was calculating what they could get from me or manufacturing emergencies between dinner courses. The conversations were authentic, the connections genuine. In January, I received an unexpected email from my father, the first communication in months that didn't include a thinly veiled request for money or accusation of abandonment. "I've been doing some thinking," he wrote. "While I still believe you overreacted to what was just family joking around, I can see how our financial requests might have seemed excessive. I miss having you in our lives and would like to find a way forward. Your mother and brother may not be ready to admit any wrongdoing, but I at least want you to know that I recognize things went too far." The message wasn't a full acknowledgement of the systematic financial abuse, but it represented the first crack in the unified denial my family had maintained. Dr. Hayes helped me craft a measured response that maintained boundaries while leaving room for potential reconciliation if genuine change occurred. "I appreciate your reaching out," I wrote. "I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but only with complete honesty and the understanding that my financial support is no longer available. Any reconciliation would need to include acknowledgement of the deliberate deception and manipulation that occurred, not just that things went too far. I would also need to see evidence of sustained change before considering regular contact." His reply came weeks later, defensive in parts but showing glimmers of actual reflection. We began a cautious, limited email exchange that Dr. Hayes monitored closely for manipulation tactics. Meanwhile, my professional life continued to flourish. I was invited to speak at a technology conference about the project I'd led. The preparation consumed weeks of evening and weekend hours, but the presentation was well received, further cementing my professional reputation. Daniel and I grew closer, our relationship deepening beyond our shared experiences with financial manipulation. He introduced me to kayaking, I taught him the basics of pottery. Weekend trips to nearby state parks became regular occurrences. For my birthday, he arranged a surprise gathering of friends I'd made over the past year, people from hiking groups, pottery class, the community center, and work. Looking around at the celebration, I realized I'd built something precious and authentic, a chosen family based on mutual respect and genuine care. When Madison announced her engagement in April, she immediately asked me to be her maid of honor. "You've been my rock through everything," she said, hugging me tightly. "There's no one else I'd rather have standing beside me." The months of wedding planning provided a joyful distraction and further reinforced the new patterns I'd established in my life. Instead of draining my resources to solve others' problems, I was contributing my time and energy to celebrate someone I genuinely cared about. My therapy sessions with Dr. Hayes gradually reduced from weekly to bi-weekly, then monthly. Our focus shifted from crisis management to long-term personal growth and occasional navigation of limited family contact. "You've made remarkable progress," she noted during a session. "You're no longer defining yourself primarily through what you can do for others. You're building a life based on reciprocal relationships rather than one-sided giving." That shift was evident in my relationship with Daniel, which had naturally evolved to include discussions of a shared future. Unlike previous relationships where I'd automatically assumed the responsible one role, with Daniel, responsibilities and support flowed equally in both directions. "I never thought I'd find someone who understands boundaries like you do," he told me one evening as we prepared dinner together. "Or someone who gets why I'm so weird about lending money." I laughed. "We're not weird. We just learned the hard way that financial boundaries are as important as any other kind." 2 years after Uncle Fred's accidental video had shattered my understanding of my family, I found myself in a life I barely could have imagined then, surrounded by authentic relationships, professionally fulfilled, and finally learning who Audrey Williams truly was beyond the cash cow identity my family had assigned me. The morning of Madison's wedding dawned clear and perfect, exactly 2 years and 3 months after I'd received Uncle Fred's fateful video. As I helped her into her dress in the bridal suite, surrounded by the cheerful chaos of bridesmaids and relatives, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for how much my life had transformed. "You look radiant," I told Madison as she examined her reflection. "Thomas won't know what hit him." "You know what's funny?" she replied, meeting my eyes in the mirror. "I don't think I would be marrying him if I hadn't watched you stand up for yourself with your family. Seeing you choose your own well-being taught me I deserved the same." Her words caught me by surprise. In focusing on my own healing journey, I hadn't considered how it might influence others around me. The wedding proceeded beautifully. During the reception, I delivered the maid of honor speech I'd spent weeks crafting, a heartfelt tribute to true friendship that moved many guests to tears. As I spoke about loyalty based on respect rather than obligation, I realized how completely my understanding of relationships had evolved. My contact with my family had settled into a carefully managed pattern. My father had shown genuine remorse after several months of reflection and had attended 2 therapy sessions on his own initiative, something I'd never imagined possible. Our relationship remained tentative but was slowly rebuilding on healthier terms. My mother and Ryan continued their manipulation attempts occasionally, though with decreasing frequency as they realized the old tactics no longer worked. I maintained strict boundaries with them, engaging only when they demonstrated respect for those boundaries. Some days, maintaining this position still hurt. Other days, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Uncle Fred had surprised everyone by making a genuine apology 6 months earlier. During a carefully arranged meeting at a neutral coffee shop, he'd acknowledged his role in the family's exploitation without excuses or justification. "I got caught up in it because it was easier than facing my own financial problems," he admitted. "The video was accidental, but maybe it needed to happen. Things had gone too far." His honesty had been refreshing, though I remained cautiously distant, accepting his apology without immediately reinstating close contact. My professional life had continued to flourish. The book I'd written about financial boundaries, Beyond the Bank, Recognizing and Escaping Financial Exploitation, had been published by a small press and was gaining attention in therapeutic circles. I'd been invited to speak at financial literacy workshops and survivor support groups, sharing my experience to help others recognize signs of financial abuse. Daniel had proposed during a weekend hiking trip to the White Mountains, presenting a ring while we watched the sunrise from a mountain peak. The moment was perfect in its simplicity and authenticity, qualities I now recognized as essential in all aspects of my life. One unexpected outcome of my journey was the foundation I'd established to provide support and resources for victims of family financial abuse. With guidance from legal and mental health professionals, we offered educational materials, therapy scholarships, and emergency assistance to those escaping financially exploitative situations. "I never thought I'd be grateful for what happened," I told Dr. Hayes during one of our now quarterly check-in sessions. "But if my experience helps even one person recognize and escape a similar situation, some meaning comes from the pain." 3 weeks after Madison's wedding, I found myself driving through my childhood neighborhood in Rochester. I hadn't planned the detour during this business trip to Detroit, but something pulled me toward those familiar streets. I parked across from my parents' house but didn't approach or announce my presence. Instead, I sat quietly, reflecting on the complex emotions the place still evoked, the good memories of childhood alongside the painful recognition of the manipulation that had occurred within those walls. the house looked smaller than I remembered. The lawn was neatly mowed, presumably by my father now that they couldn't afford to hire someone with my money. The garden my mother had always complained was too much work was thriving with summer flowers. They were managing without my financial support, just as I had always suspected they could. That evening in my hotel room, I opened my laptop and addressed a message to my subscribers, people who followed my blog and YouTube channel about financial empowerment and healthy boundaries. 2 years ago, my identity was cash cow, valued primarily for what I could provide rather than who I was, I wrote. Today, I understand that true family, whether biological or chosen, is built on mutual respect, honesty, and balanced support. The journey hasn't been easy, but it has been absolutely worth every difficult step. The most profound lesson I'd learned through this experience was that forgiveness didn't require returning to toxic dynamics. I had forgiven my family, not for their benefit, but for my own peace. That forgiveness didn't mean pretending the exploitation hadn't happened or removing the boundaries that protected me from further harm. It meant releasing the anger and resentment that had initially driven my decisions, replacing them with clear-eyed understanding and firm but compassionate boundaries. Daniel and I had begun planning a small, intimate wedding for the following spring, a celebration focused on our commitment rather than external appearances. My father would be invited with the explicit understanding that financial discussions were off-limits. My mother and Ryan would receive invitations if they demonstrated consistent respect for boundaries in the intervening months. Whether they attended or not, I would be surrounded by the authentic community I'd built, people who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide. As I prepare to close this chapter of my story, I want to ask, have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with loved ones? How did you maintain them despite the emotional challenges? If you've experienced similar financial manipulation, what helped you recognize and address it? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else recognize their own situation. Don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to follow my ongoing journey and receive resources about healthy financial relationships. Click the like button if this resonated with you, and share with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve relationships based on genuine love rather than what they can provide. Thank you for walking this path with me today. Remember, your worth never has been and never will be measured by what you can give to others. You matter simply because you exist. Until next time, this is Audrey, wishing you healthy relationships and unshakable self-worth.